Hi, Joth.
Hi, Debbie. How you doing?
Well, I'm doing fine. As I told Sophia, we have no earthquakes this morning so far. And, and I get to talk to you about a movie that I had so much fun watching.
All right. Yeah, exciting.
Well, I got to tell you, the exciting part of this film, forget about the action, which I always love. You've got a breakout with Addison Kendall as Amelia,
Right.
but then you give us this group of Ida, Colonel, Mrs. Young, Fonzie, and Arthur that had me in stitches.
Oh, that's great.
There is the inherent humor of their personalities, and I love that kick in the butt to everybody that you just gave. It says, "Do not underestimate the ARP crowd."
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I really wanted to make sure to highlight them and give them their due, and it was really fun to develop those characters, and each one brings something different to the table. But it was really important for me to make sure that they were well respected for their years of wisdom and experience.
And that comes through in flying colors, particularly Carol Florence's portrayal of Ida. Wow.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. They were all so great to work with too. They loved it. I mean, they don't get a lot of roles like that. These days.
No.
So, yeah, they were all really excited, and we had a lot of fun putting that together.
No, they are just the highlight of the film.
Yeah, for sure.
And,
yeah, I love that they legitimately contributed to bringing down the bad guys.
Yeah.
That was important.
That was very important. But
Yeah.
like you said, it's the wisdom that they bring.
For sure.
And it's also they've had lives that are well lived. And they see this as we've survived fires, floods, plagues, big wars. What are these guys? We're going to do something.
Yeah.
They're unflappable.
Yeah, for
sure. They're even Jerry Carrier's Arthur. Jerry is a scream because you know that there is and there's an Arthur in every group.
Isn't there? There is, and they have their little quirks, but they're all lovable.
Yeah. You take away one of those, and the whole dynamic of this film changes.
Yeah. It was really fun to see them work together as a team, and interact and work on each other's strengths, and so that was a great fun to do.
Well, I have to say, I think this being your first narrative feature, you are one of those guys. You have come up the ranks. You have done it the right way. You paid your dues. You got experience on so many different types of films. Worked your way up the ladder, all the way back to Dr. Quinn.
Yeah, that's
right. I even worked on a couple episodes as a PA of Dr. Quinn in the first season.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I did it in '95, which I think was season 7.
Yeah, that was like midway in, but you've come up and as coming all the way up. You did Dr. Quinn, and then you've done series. You've got series work experience. Yeah. But something that you also have that is so key in this film that I think will surprise a lot of people is the foundation of this film. Because you worked on God's Not Dead 2 and Grace Unplugged, among others, the faith-based films. This is truly a faith-based story. And I think...
Yeah, I love that you say that. And you're not the first person to say that, but I never would have expected people to really catch that. But yeah, that was intentional as well. I wanted to make sure that those elements were reflected in the characters and also were respected.
They all... from the opening, the first time we see Natasha's character of Taylor, and she's got her cross. that she wears, and she wears that through the whole film. And of course we have our Colombian, informants, and definitely, rooted in faith, and hold on to hope and hold on to faith. And of course our seniors,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
you don't get to be seniors of 94 years old without having some kind of faith. And it's beautifully woven within the script, leading up to Ida's huge, her speech.
For a moment, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I love action films, but one of the things you see so often are real 2D, cardboard cutout characters that are just setups for the action. And that just wasn't going to be good enough for me. I wanted to make sure that these characters felt real and that we connected with them. Frankly, even the Sicarios, they have backstories and they have their own personal motivation for what they do and the choices that they make.
Well, and even, DEA agent Bennett, he's got an interesting backstory.
Mm-hmm. He does.
But, talk to me about once the script got put in your hands. One of the great things here, working with Brian Shanley as your cinematographer, here again, Brian has this great depth, just like yourself, with faith-based films, with all the wonderful Hallmark movies, Grandpa for Christmas, Ladies of the House, all the McBride TV movies with Larroquette. You both have these core backgrounds that meld, that are perfect for this film and meld. So I'm curious how you and Brian went about designing your visual tonal bandwidth here, your visual construct, particularly given the constraints of this house. Because you're shooting in these corridors. You're in a cluttered basement that has pipes, and I love the mood lighting that Brian comes up with down there, and the great counter to the attic nook that's Taylor's childhood playhouse, so to speak. You got your soft twink fairy lights and pinks and gauzes and lavenders, and just a beautiful contrast everywhere, and at the same time captures the great production design, Tiffany Wolf's production design of the house as a whole, with the gleaming woods, everything you can see. It picks all this up and shows great pride is taken in this facility.
Yeah, well, we were so fortunate to find that house in particular. You would think that it's tough to find something fresh and new in a house, but that place was gargantuan. I mean, it had over 20 bedrooms.
Wow.
It had 5 floors and an elevator, and it was an actual residence. It was a private residence that was built in the 1930s. But there was just so many nooks and crannies. We were really able to capitalize on all of that. But yeah, it was important to me specifically that we give each sequence a bit of a different look, so that people didn't feel like they're running up and down the same hallways over and over, because they're not. Every scene is in a different part of the house. So it was very intentional to give different mood lighting. Some floors the hallway lights would flicker, and some floors they didn't. Again, all things to sort of differentiate where we are in the house as we progress deeper and deeper into the story.
Yeah, and the only thing that did not differ, whereas in the first act of the film, and Taylor is going from room to room looking for her seniors who are now, we got a hurricane coming, got to round you people up, and you can't find them. But every room, the beds are made, everything has a place and everything in its place. It's that sense of pride, and that this is a home that they all take pride in.
Yeah, and we didn't even end up using all of those rooms. We filmed in each senior's room. I didn't end up using them all in the final edit, but each one shows their character and shows a bit more about their background and so on. So yeah. I mean, it's definitely their home, and and Taylor is the mother hen, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know, it's really important to her to look after her, you know, her last remaining residents, you know.
You know, and because of the fact that you show us these rooms and we see the pride and care that everyone takes in maintaining the home
Hmm.
and their own personal space, we really believe that this is a home. This is not where you an assisted living facility where people go dump their relatives. This
Right,
this is
right,
this is a family, and a family
yeah,
is going to fight together the same way as the Sicarios are fighting together.
that's right, that's right, yep, yep, and take in the young girl and look after her, and she becomes family, basically,
Yeah.
one of
Um
their own.
but just I love how you have constructed that within this, and you really make it all work
Mm.
so perfectly integrated production design, complemented and buttressed by Brian's wonderful lighting and lensing. But then, because this is an action film, you've got your pacing to consider.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you bring in a relative newcomer for editing. You got John Connor, his first narrative feature as well.
Mhm.
Um, but I got to
And
tell you,
he worked alongside a real veteran with Richie Nord,
mm,
who was actually Oscar nominated for The Fugitive. So
yes.
they were a good team.
But I have to say, the pacing, you've got a great rhythm and pacing here.
Mm. Yeah, well, specifically, you know, given that it is real, you know, constrained circumstances. Yeah, that was, you know, that was really really key to sort of keeping the momentum going without there being lulls, but also, yeah, trying. You know, you have to kind of pace the audience as well, so that they don't, you know, so we don't kind of do. We don't want to do the same thing over and over. I mean, you know, each moment has its own uniqueness to it, and so on. And but boy, and you mentioned early on, but boy, Addison Kendall, she was amazing,
Whoa! I
and
mean,
that was her first time acting in front of a camera.
how and where did you find her? Because she truly, there
Oh
is
yeah.
something about
Well,
her.
we got lucky, to be honest with you, because it's a very unique role. You know, she has to look the part. She's Colombian. She has to speak Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
and she's a certain age, and so I mean, we auditioned a ton of people, a ton of young kids that were great. And I was getting concerned as we got closer because I'm like, oh man, they're great, but you know, I'm still not really feeling it.
Yeah.
And then the first time I saw Addison's read, I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you. Finally, there it is. And we met in person, and she's just such a great kid and had a great attitude. And yes, she was a little bit nervous, but you know, she was also saying, hey, let's do this, you know, let me push past my nerves and, you know, make this happen.
But
And you know, she was in some pretty trying scenes.
I was going to say, and nerves work in her favor
Yes,
in those
absolutely.
scenes. You know, when Costas Mandalore, when, you know, she's there with Bennett and you see what starts to unfold.
Yeah.
Yeah, nerves, I'd be shaking in my shoes.
Yeah, right. Or when she's out on the roof in the rain, and yeah, I mean, she was such a trooper. And I mean, she actually had some of the most emotional scenes in the movie.
She really does.
Yeah, and really brought it. And you know what? What I was so impressed, she left it all out on the table. You know, I mean, she really did. She gave it her all, and I was really proud of her and thrilled with the effort.
You know, how challenging were the action sequences to execute in this film? Because granted, there, you know, you've worked on much more intense action films in the past, but because of the nature of this, because you've got action where you've got old people flipping tables, pushing tables, it's believable. Number one, that
Yeah,
people of that age can still do that, especially when
sure,
they're working together.
sure.
But
And they really did. Those weren't stunt doubles. They actually did that.
I was going to say, no stunt doubles, old people.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a great stunt coordinator in Chad Knorr, who's a real veteran, and you know, he walked us through all the fight scenes and all the the shootouts, and yeah, I mean, it was, we had some really great, talented people behind the scenes, making this happen. I mean, filmmaking is nothing if not a collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a really great team.
Talk to me about your score. David Williams is not who I would have been my first thought as a composer here. I mean, he's got one of the most eclectic resumes as a composer.
He does.
When you can do Manticore and Wishmaster and the Ice Castles remake, it's like, talk about extremes.
I'd worked with David on another project a few years ago, and so I knew him from that, and I saw his versatility, and so, that was what attracted me to him. Yeah, I mean, obviously I wanted mood, but I wanted these characters to shine too. This isn't a horror movie.
Right.
This isn't a slasher movie. So I wanted that suspenseful tone, but I also wanted to really allow the spirit of all of the characters in the film to kind of come through as well. So, yeah, it was a delicate balance of keeping that edge, and still keeping sort of a softness to that edge,
Mm-hmm. So. But then, of course, you've got your sound design. And I have to compliment you on the sound design because of the consistency of it and the balance, your sound mix. Between
the fact that there was a Category 5 hurricane had to be a consistent factor in this, or else why wouldn't they just leave the house?
Right.
And so we had to really continue to remind viewers, hey, it's really dangerous outside, too. And, yeah, it's dangerous inside, but it's deathly dangerous outside. And so, yeah, we had to, but we also don't want it to be so consistent and steady that, we kind of lose the effect of it.
Right.
So, again, it was a matter of balance and still keeping the edge.
So one last question before I let Sophia disconnect us. I'm really curious, being your first narrative feature, what was the learning curve for you? What did you learn as a full-fledged narrative feature director with Night of the Sicario?
Well, considering my background is primarily as an assistant director where I'm working with the logistics of a film set, that part I had down. The new part for me was really developing a rapport with my actors and getting them to trust me. That was really the most important thing to me. So I had to really put aside my normally concerned about logistics and let my team handle that, which they did well, and really develop that relationship with my actors. That was the big thing for me. And I think we pulled it off. I was very happy with the relationship.
It sure looks like you pulled it off on screen. So if you were having cat fights and arguments behind screen, it sure doesn't show.
Oh, no, there were no cat fights. It really went well. It went great. We had a great team. They learned to trust me, but I had to be vulnerable, and they had to be vulnerable. So we had to trust each other.
Oh, job well done. I will be watching this film again, and I can't wait to see what you direct next.
Well, thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it, and I do have another one in the works right now, so hopefully we'll be talking again, next year.
Yay! Oh, John, thank you so much.
Thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it. Great talking with you.
Great talking with you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.